Okay, welcome to it. Once again, this is The Sheet. Thanks for joining me here today. Thanks for joining us. I always want to include Zach Phillips here playing the keyboards in the background. The Small Town Strip Club. Did you know he joined the band? Just trying to make ends meet. Playing hockey with Pavel Barber. Doing his own shows here. Producing his own shows here at TNN. Also playing with Small Town Strip Club. Okay, so the very latest is, just before we got on air here, this was, I believe, broken by Darren Drager at TSN. John Klingberg is joining the Edmonton Oilers. Don't expect him to be in the lineup tomorrow when Edmonton faces off against the Vancouver Canucks. More on Vancouver in a couple of seconds. Yes, we're going to talk about JT Miller. Calm down. Don't worry, we're going to get there. We all saw with our own eyes what happened last night between the Vancouver Canucks and Los Angeles Kings. So don't expect him tomorrow for the Oilers against the Vancouver Canucks. They'll get him into town, get him around the team, get him ready to go, and then he will start with the squad. This is affordable. Oilers are in LTIR right now, as we know. I don't think it's that expensive of a deal by any stretch of the imagination, probably coming in under $2. So we'll see. This is maybe some Evan Bouchard insurance for the power play. This is more offense from the back end. One of the things that has been said about the Edmonton Oilers that in the offensive zone, essentially it's a 3-man operation. When Bouchard is there, it's a 4. This does give them one more weapon back there as well. So it's not just a three-man gang when the Oilers are in the offensive zone. So more on Klingberg coming up in a couple of seconds. We'll talk to Brian Burke about this and other questions as well. And we got a lot of good questions for Burkie. So Burkie's always a lot of fun. Burkie stops by here in about, between 5 to 10 minutes time. So we'll get into it with Brian coming up on today's show. In the meantime, Zach Phillips, before we go any further, because we have a lot to do, let's get right to our daily outlines brought to you by FanDuel. This is what is on the docket for today. Daily outlines brought to you by FanDuel, North America's #1 sportsbook app provider. And the #1 story of the day is Ovechkin versus Marc-Andre Fleury. So we're going to talk about Ovechkin and how many goals he has scored so far, 21 away from Gretzky. And we'll talk about him scoring again yesterday. We just mentioned John Klingberg, more on him coming up in a couple of seconds. By the way, spot quiz for anybody. So Ovechkin scored the most goals in his career against Marc-Andre Fleury for Wayne Gretzky. It was against Richard Brodeur of the Vancouver Canucks. More on the Vancouver Canucks coming up shortly. Brian Burke, as we mentioned, is going to be aboard, former NHL general manager, now the executive director of the PWHL's Players Association. Brian loves taking questions, and we're going to do it again here. We finish each and every week with it, and it's become a fan favorite. JT Miller. I'm going to save the line that I heard from one manager this afternoon about JT Miller for a couple of moments here, but you do kind of get the feeling that this might be the end for JT Miller and the Vancouver Canucks, and we'll explain why in a couple of seconds. And does the future of JT Miller involve Simon Nemec, former 2nd overall draft pick, can't find his way into the New Jersey Devils lineup? That is a murderer's row of defensemen, and he can't find his way in. I get the frustration. It wasn't that long ago he played 60 NHL games for the New Jersey Devils, and now he's frozen and blocked, specifically by Jonathan Kovacevic. More on that coming up in a couple of moments. So we'll talk about Miller, we'll talk about Kovacevic. I would like, by the way, Zach, to park some time to talk about Mark-Edouard Vlasic, who says something along the lines of, it's ludicrous that there's not a defensive defenseman of the year award, or in essence, a Selke trophy for blue liners. We'll get there in a couple of moments. But as we did mention off the top, JT Miller. And is this the end for JT Miller in Vancouver? This has been a tough week for the Vancouver Canucks. It's been a tough month for the Vancouver Canucks. Outside of the win against Toronto, Zach, on Saturday, things have not exactly gone swimmingly for the Vancouver Canucks. This week, pasted by the Winnipeg Jets. Last night, curb stomped by the Los Angeles Kings. And do we have the clip, the first Turcotte goal last night that got everybody riled up?
Yeah.
And for good reason. We'll show this one if you're watching on YouTube. Weigh in if you're in the chat. You've seen the highlight of it. Watch JT Miller high in your screen, number 9, just going for a coast and a spin. And I have a look at it again. Here's the replay. Let's just get some straight legs in the defensive zone. Like, Besser's no better, too. Like, Besser had his own issues out there as well. But the thing about JT Miller is this has been consistent. And about an hour and a half ago, I was talking to one manager, and we were talking about JT Miller. And I said, did you see the Turcotte goal that's got everybody up in arms? And he goes, no. And so he called it up, and he looked at it, and he paused, and he said a line that, I don't know, I got to share with you guys. It's just too funny. He said, that looks like it's 11 o'clock and there's beer in the room, not the NHL. Oof. It's 11 o'clock and there's beer in the room, not the NHL.
That was the clip of me that we showed on
That
the
was
show
you and Barber.
yesterday.
That was you and Barber.
Yeah.
Just doing flybys on Pavel Barber, not wanting to get. You were like those guys. Like you see, there's all kinds of great video of the 80s and 90s of players, defensemen specifically, trying to check Mario Lemieux, but they get like close enough and then they back off because they know that Lemieux's gonna just like make them look stupid. So like he was like his own enforcer. No one got near Mario Lemieux because of the way he was gonna like deke them out, twist them up, and they'd be left, sort of spinning like a pretzel, like Pavel Datsyuk did to Logan Couture so many years ago. So that was. Mario was his own enforcer that way. Guys were scared to approach him. So the JT Miller stuff was, and we got a sort of a collage of things that we want to put together here. And like, there's all kinds of rumors about JT Miller in New Jersey. Like, I fully am of the mind that the New Jersey Devils would be / are interested in JT Miller, someone like JT Miller, specifically JT Miller. For a couple of different reasons. One, New Jersey is looking to go far in the playoffs this year. This is a go-for-it year, and that's another one of the reasons why Simon Nemec can't find his way into the New Jersey Devils lineup. But the other is, like, listen, we just saw this the other day, the New Jersey Devils taking on the Florida Panthers. I think that there's an understanding in New Jersey and with every team around the Eastern Conference that if you plan to go to the Stanley Cup, the road goes through Sunrise. The road goes through the Florida Panthers, and if you don't have the same type of muscle that the Florida Panthers do, you're going to come out the short end of the stick. So to all the rumors that are around today about the New Jersey Devils, I think we all see them, and I'm not sure how you feel about this one, but I would understand it if at the end of this we saw a Vancouver, New Jersey deal. But, well, again, we'll see where this one goes. But after last night, Zach, and I'll turn it over to you after this, it does feel like this is either the end of the road or the beginning of the end of the road, but like something has to happen at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret I titled today's show Breaking Point. Like, it feels like that was very, I mean, it was Alberga put it out first, and I agree with it. It's very, like, reminiscent of Pierre-Luc Dubois at the end of his time in Columbus, and there's that infamous shift where you made fun of me, like, did you break a sweat in that skate? That shift of Pierre-Luc Dubois, like, that is a bad clip by JT Miller. That shift of Pierre-Luc Dubois was the full shift, and I don't know if his knees bent. That was the same vibe. And I think that's kind of one of those, like, this can't happen anymore moments. I did have a thought, and I want to know where you're at on it, and if it's kind of like, okay, you can handle this. I think of JT Miller and have traditionally thought of JT Miller as this fiery, fierce competitor, hates to lose, never give up kind of mentality. And that's kind of the brush he's being painted with here. Watching that yesterday, I think that's completely unacceptable, not just from a standpoint, but from a guy who gets painted with that brush and gets looked at like that. Like, that's giving up. That's giving up on the team. That's your expectation of who you are. That's so unacceptable in... No, I don't care. It's not just the NHL, junior, AHL. If you're playing minor hockey, like if that's going on, that's not something you can tolerate as a coach, as teammates, as an organization. I don't think that's fair to his teammates or the people putting him on the ice, the people paying him money. Like, and that to me is frustrating, especially watching a guy who is mostly known as this, like,
well, we've seen it
lose kind of
but
guy.
That's the thing, because everyone's seen it before. Like, that there's that potential in there, but for whatever reason, and now we're getting there. Like, JT Miller's gone through a lot this year, personally and privately. Make up your own minds about JT Miller. But it does very much feel like, again, like, I'll go back to that manager's line, it's 11 p.m. and there's beer in the room. That's completely what it's looked like. And there have been plenty of nights like that where it's looked like it's 11 p.m. and there's beer in the room.
Yeah.
It's a good line.
Yeah.
The other thing is John Klingberg is now a member of the Edmonton Oilers. Again, I mentioned don't expect to see him in the lineup tomorrow against the Vancouver Canucks. There it is, Klingberg to Edmonton from Elliot Friedman. Unfamiliar with this gentleman.
Are you surprised he didn't make it like to EMN or something like that? E-O-N?
Yeah, I'm a little bit, to be honest with you, I'm a little bit disappointed in Elliot that he didn't do that. He actually spelled Edmonton correctly. Maybe he's maturing in his old age and in his as we like to say, as my barber used to always say, those aren't gray hairs, Jeff. Those are wisdom hairs. In Elliot's wisdom years, he's becoming more responsible and actually spelling things properly. So a few teams around this one. The Toronto Maple Leafs were in on this one. Edmonton ends up getting them. I think Dallas. Interestingly enough, he used to be a Dallas Star. They could use help on the right side. I think Dallas was in to some extent on this one, but I don't know that they were prepared, much like when they're trying to negotiate a long-term deal with him. They weren't prepared to meet what Klingberg wanted financially, but I do think that his former team, one of his former teams, the Dallas Stars, were around on this one. And Gary McCabe says, "You're cool with Elliot, right? I'm sure he can't come on the sheet." I haven't even asked, but am I cool with Elliot? Yes, absolutely. Elliot and I are 100% fine. We still joke around all the time, so don't worry about that. What else do we have here in the chats? Jeremiah, Klingberg to Edmonton is a non-factor IMO. Doesn't make a dent in the Western Conference, and for that matter, will not even be close to the biggest move of the trade deadline. I think that's and Alex in Kingston is asking Klingberg terms. I don't know specifically the exact dollar amount or how much is involved in bonuses, but I can't see the Oilers going higher than 2 on John Klingberg. So we'll see where the decimal point ends up on this one. And I'm assuming it's just for this year. That it's just this year, and then if things work out for Klingberg, maybe parlay that into something longer with the Edmonton Oilers. Again, my thoughts: it's Bouchard insurance on the power play. It's another offensive weapon in the offensive zone, where sometimes, I would say the majority of times, it's a 3-man unit. Like it's 3 guys getting to work offensively, and not so much the back end unless Evan Bouchard is involved. So there is that one. Yes.
With Edmonton here, you add another offensive defenseman. They can't be done defensively, right? Would you not assume that Edmonton would look to continue to make their defensive core stronger defensively here as well? I'm just asking speculation-wise.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know that specifically. I know they did want to add more offense. They've addressed that with Klingberg. I never really think that they're done until trade. Let's put it this way. No, this is not the last move that Stan Bowman makes with the Edmonton Oilers. Are they going to be is it going to be as massive as like a Ken Holland, Matthias Ekholm deal? I don't know about that. I don't know if they're going to do anything major like that. They're still waiting on Evander Kane too, which, the way that everybody will spin it is, it's getting a free agent. And the other thing about Klingberg as well that we should mention here, and I was on Sekeres and Price today talking about Tony DeAngelo. I'll get there in a second if you want. But the thing about Klingberg with the Oilers is it doesn't cost them an asset. Not that it's a quote-unquote free player, because you have to pay him and there's cap space ramifications, obviously, but it's a free player. You're not giving up an asset to get John Klingberg in. And again, I don't know what the decimal point is, but I can't imagine it would be that much of an onerous. You have it? Is it out? What is it?
Yeah, Drager put it out 1 minute before we went live.
Oh, did he? Okay, what is it?
Yeah. Klingberg contract with the Oilers, $1 million prorated salary, and $350,000 bonus.
Okay, so for cap ramifications, then that will probably come in around 1.7, maybe somewhere in there. We'll see.
Yeah.
So okay, very good. So there's the compensation that is under the 2 that we talked about. So there's the compensation now. Okay, as we stand by, is Burkie there yet? By the way,
no. I will let you know when Burkie's here.
Let me know when we get Burkie. So one other thing that's a couple of things from last night. First of all, Columbus Blue Jackets, can't stop winning. By the way, Dean Evason, I know we're handing the Jack Adams Trophy to Spencer Carberry, and for good reason. He's been fantastic with the Washington Capitals, and he's the clubhouse leader to win. Was Dean Evason going to make this thing interesting? Like shots on goal, 25-8 going into the third period last night. They ended up 34-19. Sixth win in a row for the Columbus Blue Jackets. I know it's the San Jose Sharks, but they win 4-1 and they continue to roll. We mentioned Alexander Ovechkin, the lone goal last night, as the Washington Capitals win 1-0 over the Ottawa Senators. Levi Merilainen surrenders the 179th goal, so now he's beaten Jaromir Jagr and scored on the most amount of goaltenders in the history of the NHL. I mentioned with Wayne Gretzky, he scored the most goals in his career against Richard Brodeur, 29. Number 2, Mike Liut, 23 goals, and then Kirk McLean. So 2 of the top 3 that Gretzky scored against, Vancouver Canucks. And let's not forget, too, that's when the Smythe Division basement dwellers were the Vancouver Canucks. Team wasn't good for a long time, so no surprise that Brodeur and McLean are top 3. Then Don Beaupre, our friend Greg Millen, Millsy, Bill Ranford, Don Edwards, Mike Vernon, Réjean Lemelin, and Mario Lessard. Lessard would have been with the Los Angeles Kings. That is interesting that so 202 of the goals that Wayne Gretzky scored were scored against those 10 goaltenders. So just over 20% of all Wayne Gretzky goals were scored against those 10 goalies. Yesterday, Marc-Edouard Vlasic said something pretty interesting. And we talked about a couple of these players yesterday. We've talked about this. We've had this conversation a number of different times too. And that is, he said something like, it's outrageous that the NHL doesn't have a defensive defenseman award, which I've lobbied for a long time. Again, I always believe that trophies, awards, these types of things are part of the marketing machine for the game and celebrating certain skill sets. As we've pointed out, the Selke Trophy itself was created specifically because they wanted to give Bob Gainey something. Bob Gainey does this one thing really well. Can we please give Bob Gainey, make an award for Bob Gainey? That's the origins of the Selke Trophy. But if you came up with a defensive defenseman award, specifically in the NHL, I would have to think about sorting them, but this is the group that I would put together. We should probably do more on this on a later edition. I think number 1 would be Jonas Siegenthaler of the New Jersey Devils. Jonathan Kovacevic would be in that. The Kings' number 1 pair of Vladislav Gavrikov and Mikey Anderson would be there. Braden McNabb for the Vegas Golden Knights. He's not getting a lot of headlines, but from a purely defensive point of view, he's amongst the elite. And Chris Tanev of the Toronto Maple Leafs. That would be my cluster. That would be my group. I don't know how I would have to organize those, but if we're talking about doing a Selke Trophy for defensemen, that would be my list. And with that, we will bring aboard the one and only, our Friday staple, our favorite around here. And he loves answering your questions. The one and only Brian Burke joins me once again here on the sheet on a Friday afternoon. Burkie, how are you today, my friend?
Good, Jeff. I'm at the Capitol Grill in Beacon Hill outside of Boston. So the lighting's a little odd. But don't be, it looks like a funeral home or something in here, but don't be alarmed.
You look like there should be like black curtains behind you or something like that. I'm like, Burkie,
No.
are you at a crematorium or something, Burkie? What are you doing?
I know.
What are you doing, pal?
It looks like a funeral home. I'm very much alive.
It's I like the way the camera looks up. It's almost like Brian Burke's Phantom of the Opera. You should have like a purple half mask over your face or something like that, high up in the gondola. Hey, I was just mentioning before you came on the idea of a best defensive defenseman award. Marc-Edouard Vlasic, who past career hit career game 1,300, all with the San Jose Sharks, mentioned that he in his mind it's outrageous that there isn't a best defensive defenseman award. Now, you might look at that and say, okay, he's trying to give himself an award here. You know, years ago he would have been in contention for that. But what do you think about the idea of essentially, Burkie, a Selke Trophy for defensemen?
Well, I mean, I'm getting sick of too many awards. There used to be 5 or 6. Now there's 18.
Yeah.
It's going to be 30 before long. I wouldn't oppose it. Like, philosophically, I understand the rationale. I don't think it's outrageous at all. The Pickles, I don't think it's outrageous. I think it might be an oversight. But it's been talked about for a dozen years or more. They said the Bobby Orr Award for offensive defenseman. But lose a little bit of translation for me in that Bobby Orr was a great defensive defenseman. Bobby Orr had 53 fights. He wasn't just an offensive player. Bobby Orr was a complete player and a really good one, a great one. And so to me, if you say we're going to reduce the skill level, so Chris Tanev would be my vote if it were the defensive defenseman of the year. But Chris Tanev, I would say, has a lower skill level. You need to play that style than Cale Makar does. So why would those trophies be on a par? So to me, I would say take it with a grain of salt. But I wouldn't fight about it. I don't care enough about it to fight.
And I'm just curious, like through your history as well, and defensemen that you've seen, and maybe Rod Langway is the best example of this. You know, historically, like if you're going to pick a name for a best defensive defenseman, like who are, and maybe even just go through your teams. Like when we look at Anaheim, we'll focus a lot on Niedermeyer and Pronger, certainly, but I always say there was the big three with you guys, and I'll always throw Francois Beauchemin into that conversation. But when you look at all the teams that you were involved in, and the blue lines, which were the stay-at-home dogs, the defensive D that you always felt didn't get enough credit?
Well, I know every Swedish player is going to nod their head when I say this. Matthias Olin was the best defensive defenseman I ever had that never got any accolades at all. Shot blocking machine, physical hip checker. The last of the great hip checkers. Hip check's a lost art because if you miss, you look so silly. People don't try it anymore. Yeah. Matthias Olin was a great, was a great hip checker. So to me, he would be the best defensive defenseman I ever had. I know right away Francois Beauchemin will be raising his eyebrows. And I had a couple other good ones too, but I would say Matthias Olin's the guy. No one ever talks about Matthias Olin. He was quietly an excellent player.
Let me let me transition here, but talk about another Vancouver Canuck, and that's JT Miller. I'm not sure if you had a chance to watch the Los Angeles game last night, but I mean that wasn't exactly a command performance by Miller. Tocchet sending him to the end of the bench. He barely played, didn't crack double digits. I know Tocchet tried to give him as soft a landing as he could afterwards, but I mean we all saw the barking on the bench, and it feels, Brian, like we're either at, what did Churchill say? It's not the end, but the beginning of the end. You know, this is after the Blitz in World War II, but like that's kind of what it feels like. Like whether we're at the end or the beginning of the end, something feels like it's happening or has to happen now with JT Miller.
Yeah, I think it's a breaking point too. I would say last night, as I've said till now, these two should be able to sort this out. You're dealing with real stubborn people too. JT Miller, I don't know well. He's a stubborn guy. Talk, I know well. He's a stubborn guy. They're reaching a point now where it's so public that the break has to come at some point. I think you've gone beyond the point of no return with this pair of players. And I say a pair because there's two players involved. But I know one thing, and neither one of them has covered themselves with glory. I think Talk would like to have back some of the things he said and done, and I know JT Miller would. But they've got to sort this out. It's got to move on, I think.
Let's get a couple of questions in here, and then we'll get to more of the news of the day, Burkie. And I know I'm going to say one name, and it's going to trigger a story with you. I'll let you get your jacket off and get warmed up on this one because I think you might.
No, it was freezing in here, and they turned the heat up, and now it's hot. I can't win.
Burkie's gearing down. We're playing a beer league game here. Here we go, folks. So I know when I mention one name, you're gonna get fired up. So it's a good thing you took your jacket off. You might want to roll up your sleeves in a couple of seconds here. So this one comes in from Quinn Huzz. He says, hello, hang on, let me click this up here. Hello, Sir Burke. I forgive you for Martin Brochu. We'll get there in a second. My question is, do you think, you know where I'm going with that one, right?
I already hate this.
My question is, do you think Kevin Bieksa could or should become an NHL head coach someday? Before we get to the Martin Brochu story, because it's a great one, and I hope you're as salty as possible about it. Your thoughts on Kevin Bieksa? Should he become an NHL coach one day?
I think he could be an NHL coach or a GM. I think he's coaching his son, Cole.
Yeah.
I don't think he has any interest. I don't think Juice has any interest in going to a team because he's coaching his son, who's a real good young player and a real fine young man, too. I met him last year. So I don't think Kevin would be interested in that right now, but I think Kevin could write his own ticket as far as being a coach or a GM down the road. I think there's a lot of guys that can do the job, but guys that can do it well and do it with some flair and handle the publicity side of it. And Kevin, I mean, you got to remember, I drafted Kevin. He was a so-so player, turned into a really good player, a real cerebral player. He was a grunt, but he played better than a grunt. He could run a power play. He could kill penalties. He could explain to other players what was going on the ice. He had that rare intellect and personality. So I think he can do whatever he wants, but I don't think he's interested in doing it right now. You got to remember, a lot of these guys have $20 million in the bank. They're not interested in going through the strain that I went through, or other guys went through. They're getting fired and the public disgrace. They're not interested in that. They have to overlook the money side of this and say it's something I truly want to do.
You know, Kevin told me something interesting a couple of years ago. We were at hockey night one night, and we were talking about Cole, and we were talking about my kids playing minor hockey and his kids in youth hockey, etc., and back and forth. And he's coaching, as you mentioned. And I said, Juice, tell me one thing. I don't think he'll mind if I say this. I said, tell me one thing that you do as a coach that you don't think anybody else does. And he laughed and he said, there's one thing that I do at practice that I don't think any other coach does. And I said, what's that? And he says, at the end of a drill, when I'm describing the next drill, I don't let my kids take a knee to recover. And I said, why not? He said, one of the things that we never teach, and Kevin knows this as a player, is the feeling of being tired and having to stay on the ice. And he said, I'll call my kids in after a hard couple of laps or whatever, and they will stand there. Because to me, that's them practicing being caught on the ice. Maybe it's second period, long change. And I want them to know what that feeling is so they get comfortable with it. And we work on that in practice. They all hate it. They all want to take a knee. I don't even know if he tells them that that's why he's doing it. But in his mind, because as a player, you never get a chance to practice being out there too long. Oh, look at the shift, $1:30, 2 minutes. Oh, this is crazy. He says, that's my way of teaching these kids what it feels like when you're on the ice too long. Do you have a thought on that one? I thought it was pretty ingenious.
He's a really bright guy. I think that would work for Kevin. I'm not sure it's necessary. Depends on how long you stay at the whiteboard. Now you get me going on another pet peeve of mine, the whiteboard. If you do 5 minutes at the whiteboard, standing is too long.
Yes.
You do 4 minutes at the whiteboard, kneeling is too long. Do your whiteboard in 2 minutes or less, for God's sake.
Yep. And do your first drills in the room. Like when the kids hit the ice, they should be ready to do a drill right away. Don't get out there and shoot.
Preset packets of 5 drills.
Yes.
Here's
and
the first 5 drills.
Don't spend.
All the NHL guys have, the whatever, let's say the Nickelback, whatever they'll call it, or the Penticton, whatever, would be a Z drill.
Yeah.
They can name them, and they'll know what they are by heart. They know about 40 drills by name. Just give them 5 drills and say, we're starting with the Nickelback, we're doing the Penticton, we're going with the Kamloops, whatever, and then do that.
I agree with you. Instead of spending the first 5-10 minutes just, working on crossbars and empty net goals while the coaches all guffaw at the penalty box. Okay, I got to get on this one then. So you mentioned you answered the Kevin Bieksa question. Can you address Quinn's point? I forgive you for Martin Brochu. Now, when you were the general manager of the Vancouver Canucks, in a waiver draft, you shocked a lot of people. I had my eyebrows raised, certainly like, what's Vancouver doing taking Martin Brochu? Can you tell us the reason why you took netminder Martin Brochu?
Yes, we had a deal worked out with the Islanders to get
Gar Snow.
The deal was all set. Mike Milbury called me the night before. We had done the deal 3 days before we'd agreed to it. I said, you're going to deal him to me, get a pick, and that way you won't lose him in the waiver draft. And he said the night before, we were driving to San Jose, or Santa Rosa. The NHL had us in training camp that year in Santa Rosa, California. Home of Charles Schultz, the famous Minneapolis cartoonist.
Yeah, Peanuts.
And we were at the rink, Peanuts. Yeah, the Peanuts guy. He was a Minnesota guy. Anyway, we had the deal all set. I called Mike Milbury. I said, we all set? He said, no, Charles doesn't want to do the deal for Gar Snow. So I'm like, Mike, I'm screwed. I haven't made any contingency plans. I'm screwed. He said, that's too bad. So we took Martin Brochu and then had to sell it as a good choice, a logical thing that we've been working on for months. We hadn't even talked about Martin Brochu. Great kid, by the way. Wonderful young man, but couldn't play a lick.
Was that the like, how many different times did you get sort of backed into a corner where you had to make a move that you didn't plan on making, didn't want to make, but then you had to sell it to your marketplace or sell it to your owner that this was the plan all along?
That was really the only time. We got in a deal with St. Louis too, where we're talking about two different players. I'll have to refresh my memory on this. We're talking about two different players, and John Davidson was the president of the team, and I think Doug Armstrong was the GM, I think. And we were talking about two different players. We were talking about one player, and they were talking about a different player with very similar names. And we end up finally hit the wall and said, "What are you talking about? This guy doesn't even play. He didn't play in junior. He played college." And we're like, "What?" We realized we were talking about two different players from the get-go. I'll refresh my memory on that and tell you that story. It's better than I'm telling it right now.
Let's pause on this one. One of the things that I did, I mentioned to a couple of people this week that I was going to. I can't believe in all these years I haven't mentioned this one thing to you that always makes me laugh whenever I go to his house. So down the street from me is Mikhail Grabovski. So Grabo, when he's playing with the Maple Leafs, he met a girl from Pickering. They ended up getting married. And then when he came back from Europe, settled just where I am on the sort of border of Stouffville and Uxbridge. He got a really lovely place at Musselman Lake. So I ran to Grabo at the gym when he first moved back, and he said, "Come on over. We got a rink. We got a pond and sauna and the whole deal." And so I go over to Grabo's house, and it's gorgeous. Like, it's this beautiful home, and he's got like the half a rink with 3 chillers, Burkie, and a basketball court, and I mentioned like the pond, and it's gorgeous. And I knock on the door, and Grabo opens up, and he said, I'll never forget this. He says, "Jeff, welcome to the house Burkie built. Do you have a memory of Mikhail Grabovski?"
I like Grabo. I made them all take small numbers, lower numbers, till I made the deal for Phil Kessel. I told him 35 and below. Our cup team, the highest number on that team was 35. And like Gretzky and Paris, they wanted high numbers. I said, "No, you got to take lower numbers." When the Twins came to Vancouver, I made them take 22 and 33.
Yeah.
Got to Anaheim, and I said, "You're taking lower numbers when I get to Toronto." And then I made the Kessel deal without specifying anything about his number. And Grabo's agent called me right away and said, "You can't make us take lower numbers if you're not going to make Kessel take a lower number as well." So I said, okay, I gave in. So we had 5 higher numbers within a week. And it still to this day burns my ass that we did it that way.
What number would you have cared what number he ended up taking, or did it just have like
anything under 35? The one of the goalies had to be 35. The other one had to be 1 or 30.
See, once upon a time, like a younger Jeff would have said, "Oh, poppycock." But you know what? I love seeing, maybe it's just the novelty now, I love seeing lower numbers on players. But would you go as far as to saying the single digits are for defensemen and the double digits are for forwards?
Well, problem there was Scott Niedermayer was wearing 27 in Anaheim. So I would have, if I'd thought it through back in the day, if I'd become a GM 30 years ago instead of, I probably would have thought it through and said, okay. The NFL did that for years. The NFL reserved certain numbers for offensive linemen. Defense. I think it's still in place, by the way. Well, it's been perverted a little bit. But that's what I would have done. I would have stuck with it. But I didn't think of it. Didn't have the vision or the guts. Vision to think of it and the guts to make guys do it.
We got a bunch more here. Really quick. So Jake submits this one. Hello, sir. I was curious about your thoughts on Sakic and Forsberg over your term as general manager. Have any good stories or times you were just shaking your head watching these two? Like Peter Forsberg's flat out, full stop, one of my favorite players of all time. And how do you not love Joe Sakic? A thought on these two, Burkie, from your time?
Well, Peter Forsberg, people don't mention this enough. He was a very physical guy.
Oh, yeah.
He initiated. He started the reverse hit. Not started. Terry O'Reilly's the first guy I ever saw do it, but Peter Forsberg mastered the reverse hit. He was a big open ice hitter. He was a vicious guy. He had a mean streak you could drive a truck on, and that was great. And people never talk about that when they talk about Peter Forsberg. They talk about the goals and the thing in Norway or whatever, the breakaway, the shootout move.
Oh yeah, the one on Corey Hirsch.
We don't
Lillehammer.
talk about what an intense competitor he was and what a vicious competitor he was.
Yeah.
This guy played hard. I loved Peter Forsberg as a player. I loved him his whole career. And Joe Sakic was just a quintessential great player. Great playmaker, great shooter, great teammate, great guy. So it was awesome to watch them both.
Do we have some civilians breaking in, Burkie?
Yeah, I got some civilians breaking in. I got to go. I'm in their space.
Oh, we got a little bit of time left. You can. Are you like it? There's a sign on the door that says like wine club or something like. Are you in a wine cellar, Burkie?
Yes, no. I'm at a restaurant. I'm at the Capitol Grill.
Oh, and you're on the move.
We're on the move. Hang on.
All right. We'll see where we're going. This is the action shot of Brian Burke progressing through the restaurant. He's been booted out of the wine cellar, and he's making his way to a quiet place in Beacon Hill here at this lovely establishment where he can regale us all with great stories about netminders who played, I don't even think he got a dozen games in, players like Martin Brochu, and it looks like he's frozen right now. So we'll get to him in a couple of moments when we reconnect with Burkie, who's, as we mentioned, he's on the move. Once he unfreezes, we'll get him back here. We got a couple of really interesting questions that we're going to get to when Burkie comes back, including one here about, man, people still ask about this one. There's a fascinating story attached to it as well. 1992, and here we go. We have you back, Burkie. Where'd you go? Where'd they put you?
I moved to a restaurant. This gentleman's being real nice.
Oh, okay. So a nice civilian.
I'm in another room in the wine cave at the Capitol Grill.
Well, open up a nice bottle of Cabernet and get ready for this question. So, Mark Feldman, Burkie, submits this one. I have a question for Burkie. In 1992, he is credited with canceling the Brass Bonanza. Curious how, why, and how did the fans react? If I remember correct, I was the ripe old age of 2 months. So a 2-month-old Mark Feldman, when you canceled the Brass Bonanza. What's the backstory on this one with Hartford?
Oh, it's knocked over a place setting. It's not easy, folks. Not easy being Brian Burke.
Yeah, no, it's tough. 5-star restaurants and for lunch every day. Yeah, it's tough.
So we got to Hartford, and I asked the players, what's one thing you would like to change here? The way we warm up, anything like that. And one of our captains, who is a current NHL GM, I won't name him, but he's in Anaheim, came to me and said, we'd like to get rid of the Brass Bonanza. The players think it's a fight song. Sounds like a fight song. No, it's a great song. Anyone who knows the Hartford Whalers knows.
Yeah, it's great.
Brass Bonanza is a wonderful song. But the players felt it was minor league and American Hockey League like, and we should get rid of it. So I got rid of it. I took the heat for it. I didn't tell anyone for about 10 years, but I got fried for that. As soon as I got fired, I didn't really get fired in Hartford. I got replaced. But as soon as I stepped aside in Hartford, they replaced it, put it back in. I got fried for that, but it was our players that came and asked for it.
Yeah. So they, the captain in question, we're not going to say who it is, but his name rhymes with Pat Verbeek then?
Sounds a lot like that, yes.
Oh, okay, good. But we're not going to say who it was, who actually shut down the Bonanza.
Patty Verbeek was a great captain for me. I loved having him.
Yeah.
He was tough. He scored goals. He was a leader. I'm not surprised he's doing well as the GM. So I'm not singling him out. He was representing the player vote. But the players came to Pat, said, you're the captain. Get Burkie to get rid of this song. So we got rid of it. People hated it. People loved that song. They hated what I did. I still get questions about it. People still stop me on the street. Why did you get rid of Brass Bonanza?
Burkie, Mark Feldman, who just wrote in, says, I was 2 months old when you canceled Brass Bonanza, but they grew up to love the song.
Mark Feldman, find something else to do. Get a hobby.
His
Don't
hobby
pick on me.
His hobby is picking on Brian Burke on Friday afternoons here on the program. Okay, so Harrison Clements writes this one. Hi, Mr. Burke. Over your time in the NHL, what have been the main benchmarks you've seen that indicate a rebuild will succeed or fail? And here's an interesting one. On that same note, How much luck do you feel is involved in a successful rebuild or retool? Hang on, let me pause on this for 1 second, Burkie. Luck is one of those things that we never like to talk about because I know I do. I always want to pretend that you can explain things, that this happened because of that and you should have seen this. When in reality, whether it's a game itself or putting a team together, how much is just flat? I mean, the lottery for the draft is one, but like how much flat out is just luck involved here?
A lot, but you can't over time. Luck should cancel out. It shouldn't be something you use as an excuse or take for praise if you're lucky over a period of time, because it's like drafting. Everyone says, "Oh, Tampa Bay drafted better than anyone else for 2 or 3 years." Then it levels off because it does. And so the luck thing, yes, we were lucky when we drafted the Twins that the first round was the worst first round ever, and teams were willing to trade picks. That's the only reason we were able to do it. Not because I'm a genius, but because we were lucky. But over time, luck cancels out. It evens out. So I'd say this guy, the question would be, benchmarks would be a certain number of wins, certain place in the standings, change in plus minus, change in your goal differential. There are curriculum or certified points that you would use to say to your team, here's our goal for the season. We're going to try and drop our goals against by 0.2 per game or whatever.
You know what? Pause on goal differential for 1 second. There was that 1 year, and this was the symbolically the beginning of the end of that most recent Chicago Blackhawks dynasty. There was that year where Chicago finished first in the conference and Nashville finished 8th. And you looked at this one and you said, okay, well, this is going to be a steamroll. Like Chicago's going to roll right over Nashville, until you went to the point that you just brought up. If you look at goal differential, 5-on-5 was almost identical. And as you know, like in the postseason, there's no 3-on-3 overtime. There's no shootout. That just continues. And there were a lot of people that pointed at that and said, it looked like it was going to be a blowout. It wasn't. Nashville ended up winning, and we probably could have predicted it. I'm glad you mentioned that very specifically goal differential, because that one has always been for me, and I'm guessing for you too, that one's been a real huge indicator of success or failure for me.
Yeah, and you go back to when we won the Cup. We played Vancouver. We beat them 4-1. So history books will look at that series and say, we steamrolled the Vancouver Canucks and only won 1 game. One of those games were there were 2 double overtime games in that series. 2 double overtime games. Yeah. Vancouver won 1, we won 1. If Vancouver wins both those, all of a sudden now you're playing for a game 5. So there is a great deal of luck involved. You look at the game when we played Detroit in the conference final, Scott Niedermayer scored a goal. He shot a puck at the net. Nick Lidstrom put a stick down on the ice. It hit the stick lying on the ice, bounced over. Dominic Hasek falls in the net. Now we got overtime. Teemu Selanne scores. We win the game. We lose that game, we probably lose the series. So there is luck, but not over time. Over time, good teams are good.
A few more I want to get to here in the chat in a couple of seconds, but I do want to ask you about a couple more things going on around the NHL right now. I mean, the Alexander Ovechkin chase continues, and it seems like every game there's a new stat or something new that he's done. So he scores last night, the only goal of the game, 1-0. Washington beats Ottawa, and Levi Merilainen gives up the lone goal. So now Ovechkin has scored on his 179th goaltender, breaking the old record of 178 held by Jaromir Jagr. I know a couple of weeks ago we talked about Ovechkin, and you talked about how you like how excited he is when his teammates score. I went and had a look at the numbers of goaltenders that Wayne Gretzky scored against, and the top 10, it's Richard Brodeur, Mike Liut, Kirk McLean, Don Beaupre, Greg Millen. 2 of the 3 were Vancouver Canucks. That was the Smythe division. It was a different era. And we had a question earlier this week, and you're way more qualified to discuss it than I am. And that is, somewhere along the way, the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference sort of changed how they played hockey, where the East was a little bit looser and the West was bigger and tighter checking. I have no idea why that happened or how that happened. Do you have any idea why, Burkie?
I think a lot of it was it's a copycat league. When a couple teams got bigger, like when we got bigger, LA got bigger right away.
Yep.
I think there's teams that it's a copycat league, and I think teams said, okay, it's an arms race. All of a sudden, it started before us. I'm not taking credit for it. But you go back and a team adds a heavyweight. All of a sudden, that team has to add a heavyweight. So the team adds a second tough guy. So I never liked one guy. I never liked having one guy who could fight. It's too lonely a job. So I get a second guy. Now they got to get a second guy. All of a sudden, your team has way more snarl. The other teams in your division look and saying, whoa, they added two guys. We got to add at least one. So all of a sudden, you got a clump of teams that's gotten bigger and uglier on purpose, by intention. So I see it going back that way a little bit now. I think the West is getting a little bigger again.
Yeah. Okay, I want to ask you this one. So Coach Roush in the chat said this. Burkie said this a few weeks ago, and it's my new favorite line. So he's quoting you, Burkie. Quotes, I love Harry Sinden. He's a great guy, and I love talking to him, but I got one hand on my wallet when I do. Like, that's a great line. That's hilarious. And you've had a bunch of these. One of the things I keep hearing about these Friday shows that we do is I love hearing Brian talk. He's got great lines. He always makes me laugh. I don't think I've ever asked you this one before, Burkie. Who makes you laugh?
Who makes me laugh? Neil Smith. Neil Smith is one of the funniest guys I've ever seen in my life, and he does classic impersonations. He can impersonate anyone. He used to do the Prof. He used to do Gary Bettman. He used to do Jimmy D better than Jimmy
Devellano?
D could do himself. Yeah. So Neil Smith is one. Doug Armstrong is a funny guy, and he and George McPhee would be 1 and 2, I'd say, as far as making me laugh. Doug Armstrong has a wonderful sense of humor. He doesn't show it as much as you'd like him to show it. He's got a great sense of humor. And George McPhee, he's just a howl.
I've made the point before, speaking of George McPhee, that pound for pound, he's either the toughest or certainly one of the toughest players to ever play in the National Hockey League. Agree or disagree?
Agree. He fought everybody, and he beat most of them. He got draws against guys who give him 30, 40 pounds away. Fought out of his weight class all the time. Tough as nails and fearless. Look you right in the eye and say, I'm going to kill you. The guy twice your size. So, he was, for a mild-mannered guy, a college degree, got a law degree, good guy, educated, calm most of the time. But then he got in a fight with a coach, remember? He was in
Lauren Mulliken.
Lauren
Mulliken. So that was Chicago, Columbus.
I mean, I love George. I think George is one of the best guys in the game.
I have all day, all the time in the world for George McPhee. Okay, one more as we leave you here this Friday afternoon to get back to your lunch. What's this? You're in Boston. What's this weekend looking like for you? Set the table for what Brian Burke has when you say goodbye to all of us here.
Well, I came here for a meeting with the PWHL, some business, not with them, but with a potential broadcast partner. And then I'm going to a game tonight at Boston College. Providence College, my alma mater, is playing at Boston College. So I'm going to go see them play. And then they play again tomorrow night at PC, at Providence. Yeah. So I'm going to see a game tonight. We're taking a bus down, see a game tomorrow night, and then I'll come back on Sunday. So I'm excited. I haven't seen my old team play probably in 7 or 8 years now.
So would you go and talk to the team then?
No, not unless the coach asks me to, no.
Okay. How often do you get back to Providence College? How often do you visit?
Well, when I used to be a GM, I get there more often, so I did more scouting. Since I left the GM ranks, less so. Probably once about 7, 8 years ago, that'd be it.
Yeah. It's I was thinking of you yesterday. Doug McLean was here, and you talked about the Brass Bonanza a second ago. He was talking about the cannon and the origins of the cannon, because the cannon features prominently in the Stadium Series jersey for the Blue Jackets. And he said today, like this morning, he was having coffee with Dale Talon, Ron Hextall, and Jeff Rimmer. So we'll close on this one. What do you think that conversation sounded like? Ron Hextall, Dale Talon, Jeff Rimmer, Doug McLean.
I don't talk much when I have breakfast with Dale Talon. I left him out. He's one of the funniest guys I ever met. He can tell stories all day. And I tell a decent story, but he really tells a great story. Mm-hmm. So Dale Talon, Ron Hextall is one of the nicest guys I ever met in my life. I'm so glad I got to work with him. He's taken a real beating after the Pittsburgh thing. It was really unfair the way they ran him out of town. He's a great guy. And who's the other guy? Jeff Rimmer?
Jeff Rimmer, guy. Yeah, play-by-play voice Columbus.
Great booster of the Columbus Blue Jackets. What a voice for his team.
Yeah.
And I hate the cannon. I hate the cannon, Jeff.
Listen, Doug McLean did. I think it was his final act as manager. The Booster Club wanted it, and I think he wanted to punish everybody in Columbus that was going to turf him. He okayed the budget for the cannon. I think that was his final missive towards Columbus was greenlighting the cannon.
It's been 30 years, right? You know what's coming. They score a goal. You know what's coming, and it still makes you jump. Drives me nuts. You think an intelligent guy would get used to it, but you don't. He still gets you every time.
Still surprised you, just like we all know that the pass to Ovechkin, Carlson to Ovechkin is coming. He's setting up in the same spot. He hasn't moved, and he still scores. Everybody knows it's coming. Listen, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your meal at Beacon Hill there, and we'll talk to you in 7 days. Have fun at the Friars games this weekend.
Thanks for having me on, Jeff.
There he is, the great Brian Burke, for all you civilians, joining us every Friday here on the program. Had a little walk and talk there with Burkie Zach a couple of seconds ago as he made his way through the restaurant. What did it say on that door that was behind Burkie? Did it say like wine club or wine cellar or something like? Did you just like pull up in like a wine closet, Burkie, to do the hit today?
Okay, so like Burkie texted me right before the show and goes, "Driving there, we'll be like close," and I was like, "Driving there? Like that's what, right as we're going live." I'm like, "Driving there? What the hell does that mean?" and then I see him on the camera. I see, obviously before everyone else, I see him like he's in a wine room. What's going on? And then, Jeff, listen to this. I don't know if you caught this in the chat. Wish, unless it's a parody, but Wish.
Okay, is Wish in there?
When he's walking, he goes, "Am I high?" And J-Rock replies, "I feel like you ask that every morning."
Oh, that's so good. Oh, that's so good. That was fun. That was fun. That was fun with
Burkie. That's awesome.
anything. Do you like that Martin Brochu story? Now, Burkie, I've heard Burkie tell that story, the Mike Milbury story about the botch trade. Now, the owner stepped in and said, "Yeah, you're not trading Gar Snow to the Vancouver Canucks," and it left Burkie. I've heard him tell that story. And you got to get him sort of deeper in the evening when he just starts chewing and spitting and just like the F-bombs start coming out about how the actual conversation went down between Burkie and Mike Milbury. But, he's at a nice restaurant. I'm sure he doesn't want to put any salt on his tongue, upset anyone trying to have a nice lunch. But I've heard that story before, Zach, and it can get pretty salty. It's like when Patrick Burke was on with us earlier on, like a month ago or 2 months ago. And he was saying, it sounds like everybody hates each other when they talk to each other on the phone in the NHL. It's just like, oh, no, we're best of friends. Oh, like that's just. Or when like Burkie Jr. picked up Big Brian's phone, Big Burkie's phone, Glenn Sather started spitting at him. Oh, hi, Patrick. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. So, tell your dad that it's just the way that everybody, I think, used to talk. I'm sure it's more civil now than it ever used to be. But I remember when I used to work with Bill Waters, and we used to do the Leafs lunch show at 6:40. And I remember we was sitting around the office, and he'd get a call from whomever, and like the minute he picked up the phone, it'd be like Talon or Rutherford or something like that. And I swear, like they wanted to kill each other. And they're like, "Okay, bud, we'll talk to you in 10 days, or talk to you in 7." It's just like you just spent like 5 hours like hardcore destroying each other and screaming. And then I was like, "All right, pal, I'll see you at the restaurant. Appetizers at 5:30. It's just what? I'll tell you what. There's another. There's one. You want to hear a good one? Okay,
yeah, let's go.
So there is one. I can't say the name. There's one current general manager, and the story that I was told. And this guy is like notorious for when he picks up the phone, just like starts losing it on people. And his wife says to him, like, you need to stop talking like that. Like, that's horrible language. That is terrible. And he's like, what do you mean? Why do I got to stop? He goes, you're not going to have any friends. Like, if you talk to people like that, like, no one's going to like, you're not going to have any friends. And in the line of the year, he spins around and says, F them all but 6 to carry my coffin. If I got 6 when I'm dead, I'm just fine. That's all I need. 6. It's all I need. F them all but 6 to carry my coffin.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's a good line.
I love that line.
That's
From
good.
all but
I like
6
that
to
one.
carry my cup. Anyway, okay. On that lovely note, a couple of things to promote here. I want to. It's like civilians for you. F them all but 6 to carry my coffin. Okay. Up close with Stephen Brunt. I want to make sure that we mention this. So episode 2. So episode 1 was with Keith Pelly. That raised some eyebrows at a certain place where I used to work. About the nature of what would have happened if they did get the NHL rights package. That was a news-making podcast. That was great. It was a great way to open up by Stephen. Episode 2, we played the clip the other day and had Stephen on. It's with Adam Copeland, who you'll know better from WWE fame as Edge, Orangeville's own, huge hockey fan. So I finished listening to it yesterday. It's an awesome podcast. It is fantastic. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch it on our Leafs Nation YouTube channel as well. I highly recommend, even if you're not, you don't really need to be a pro wrestling fan to enjoy this one. There's a lot of hockey content on it. He talks a lot about hockey on it. But the stuff about growing up, like, I'll just be blunt, like really poor in Orangeville and not being able to afford to play hockey. Always wanted to play hockey, but as single mom and couldn't afford to put Adam in hockey, and he got into to professional wrestling. It's a heartbreaker when he talks about his mom. I'll be honest with you, Zach. It's great. The whole podcast is fantastic. Highly encourage you to check that out. So glad that we're all sort of collaborating on the same network with Stephen. Up close with Stephen Brunt, episode 2, Adam Copeland, and also, and we'll play a clip here. And we'll come back and talk about the 2 games on the go around the NHL tonight. Down to Earth with Irfan Gaffar in conversation with both Mike and Spencer Gillis. Mike, a former agent, Mike, a former general manager with the Vancouver Canucks, and Mike, an almost executive director of the NHL Players Association. Here's a clip, Mike Gillis specifically talking about the late Rick Rippon, this part of Down to Earth, Irfan Gaffar in conversation with Mike Gillis. Have a look.
I think we're only scratching the surface on mental health issues, particularly in the world of social media and pressures that weren't around 15 years ago that have been growing exponentially. And so the pressure on people that are elite level performers that are in the public domain is even that much more enhanced. And I don't think that a lot of the programs are really progressive in addressing how social media is disaffecting athletes and people. We went through a really troubling situation with Rick Rippon, who we all really liked and admired and was a great teammate. And in hindsight, I wish we had some tools that are available today, but still, you need to get in there and be part of the solution in the most profound way you can be. And sometimes that's hard to figure out. But I do think there's a lot of room left to understand the issues and address them appropriately.
Down to Earth with Irfan Gaffar in conversation with Mike and Spencer Gillis. If you're not familiar with Spencer, actually we should have Spencer on the show. We should have Mike on the show. Spencer is an agent, has his own company, and represents, amongst other athletes, Sarah Fillier of the New York Sirens of the PWHL. He has a whole stable of athletes in the PWHL. That's become sort of where he's got his foot in the door and doing some really great work there. So very much looking forward to that conversation. Nation. You can, by the way, get that podcast wherever you get your podcasts, or get it on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. So check those two podcasts out. Stephen Brunt, Up Close, interview with Adam Copeland, and Down to Earth with Irfan Gaffar, both Mike and Spencer Gillis. There you go. Okay. Elsewhere, really quickly here, let's get to the games on the go around the NHL tonight. There are exactly 2. This brought to you by FanDuel. Proud to connect fans to the major sports moments that matter to them. It's like feast or famine in the NHL with schedules, as we know. It's Friday, not so much. Wednesday, there's just a couple for a national night. There's a bonanza on Tuesday, a bonanza on Thursday. Saturday is Saturday, specifically in Canada, and it is what it is. So the Pittsburgh Penguins facing off against the Buffalo Sabres at KeyBank Center. The Pittsburgh Penguins, of course, most recently waiving, and he cleared Tristan Jarry, netminder, down to Wilkes-Barre, and the Vegas Golden Knights facing off against the Carolina Hurricanes. Freddie Anderson, Zach, has been activated from IR. Dustin Tokarski sent down to AHL Chicago after Carolina. Dustin Tokarski, what is he, 4th rung with the Buffalo Sabres last year, and then couldn't make it with Ottawa, and then ends up Carolina Hurricanes end up losing to the Buffalo Sabres. Anyway, he's down to AHL Chicago. Pyotr Kochetkov gets to start tonight for Vegas and Carolina. Anything spicing your chili here today, Zach?
I mean, normally, honestly, Jeff, yes. Tonight, not so much. Tonight is like tune in, tune out. Might try to go play some pond hockey. The biggest thing that I'm going to be looking for here is Vegas, Carolina, just given the 2 teams, and a return of Freddie Anderson. But like, I wish I could add something special or like fun to what you just said. I don't got anything. There's 2 games here, man. I'm looking at Vic, what he said in the chat, the Nick Alberga stat, 51 games this week, 41 on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday.
Yes, I know. Alberga's great with that stuff, man. He's awesome.
Yeah.
Look, Pittsburgh Buffalo, it's the someone has to win cup, and as far as Vegas Carolina, it could be a preview of the Stanley Cup, so maybe spin it that way. I'm off to the CAA Center tonight in Brampton to go see the Steelheads and the Owen Sound Attack. So I'll have a full scouting report on Porter Martone. I'm going to be like that guy that sees one prospect, one game, and then makes up his mind. I remember, I'll tell you my favorite story about that. I remember this would have been, what year? It was the year that your Toronto Maple Leafs took Yuri Tolusti. And the guy they really wanted was Brian Little. And I went to St. Mike's, so St. Mike's was facing off against the Barrie Colts because Little was playing for the Colts. And I remember I was standing beside a Maple Leaf scout, and we were shooting the shit and blah, 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 blah. And like halfway through the first period, he folds his book and he goes, "Well, I'm leaving." And I go like, "Where are you going?" Like, we're at Bathurst and St. Clair. There's like no other games that you would want to see. Like sometimes a scout will stay for 1 period here, 2 there, and then hustle somewhere else. I'm like, where are you going to go? Like right in the heart of Toronto, like still going to be like an hour or whatever to Oshawa if you're going to go see a Generals game or like what. And he's like, "Nope, my general manager just walked in. He's going to see 1 game of Brian Little and he's going to make up his mind. I've watched this kid for 4 years. But it doesn't matter because my manager is going to watch him for 1 game and then totally make up his." I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to go. I mean, I've seen Porter Martone, but just for the purposes of this conversation, I'm going to watch Porter Martone for 1 game. I'm going to come back with a full scouting report. So all comes down to what he's going to do against Owen Sound in the OHL tonight, Zach. How about that?
Yeah,
I'm going to be that irresponsible. Make or break. I don't know. I saw Porter Martone against Owen Sound.
Monday.
Yeah, just hammer it. Just hammer it. Anything from you before we wrap up? What do you got cooking this weekend?
Saturday night, Montreal Leafs. I will be doing Leafs Nation After Dark, and I will be joined by none other than the Golden Muzzy, Nick Alberga, on the post-game show. You can find that over on the Leafs Nation YouTube channel, so please come join us over there. You want me to hit you with something quickly before we leave, if you've got a minute?
Yeah, I do. What you got? I just got to go sharpen my kid's skates, but that's good.
Okay. I saw this before we came on. Coach Chippy breaking. The St. John Sea Dogs have named Coach Chippy as the 12th head coach in team's history. What did you think about that? I think that's fun.
So first of all, St. John Sea Dogs always do stuff like this. So can you pop that back up again?
Yep.
So on the left-hand side, like to the right of Coach Chippy, camera left, that's Trevor Georgie. So Trevor he used to be the general manager of the team. He is now the team president, and works with the parent company as well. When you talk about young executives that are sort of like the next wave of young executives in hockey, in the NHL, front and center is for a lot of people is Trevor Georgie. So the team is owned by Scott McCain of McCain Fries. You like your fries? Get your McCain Fries. Cheap plug there for McCain. They're always doing stuff like this. Like he'll do like pro wrestling themed nights. Like he's one of the more innovative. He has like a really strong sports marketing background and a really creative. Like he's got one of these. He's one of these guys that has like a lot of creative bones in his body, and he's always thinking about stuff like that. When I saw that today, I was like, that is so Trevor Georgie. And one day, Zach, that guy is going to be like a manager of an NHL team. Again, if he wants it. Him and McCain do a lot of outside hockey work as well. But Trevor George, like, it didn't surprise me because that's just the guy and the thinker that Trevor Georgie is. And I got to tell you, we were talking about Pavel Barber yesterday.
Yeah.
Coach Chippy made this career out of YouTube videos. And that's right, like more Instagram and TikTok, right? And all the kids watch, and NHL players watch it too. It's so good. And he cranks out the Leafs ones after every game, and they're all home runs. They're all funny. They're all edited really well. He's such a dynamic guy. He's hilarious. Like, I've had parents come up to me and say, hey, did you see the latest Coach Chippy? I'm like, you're in your 50s. You show me Coach Chippy videos.
Yeah.
But it's true. The guy's awesome.
My uncle, unfortunately, is a Habs fan. After the Leafs lose every year, he sends me the Coach Chippy videos. Whatever Chippy puts out, I've gotten it. I've gotten it for like 5 straight years now. A Chippy video after the Leafs losing round 1. I'm like, thanks. Thanks. Yeah. But that's so funny. I thought that was cool.
Not surprised. Good on the St. John Sea Dogs for doing that one. He'll make his debut tonight against Charlottetown, the Islanders, and become the first content creator to coach a game in CHL hockey. Attaboy, Trevor. Attaboy, Trevor Georgie. All right. Thanks to Brian Burke, as always, for stopping by on Fridays. The sheet going off the air on behalf of Zach Phillips, on behalf of everybody here at the Nation Network. You know the schedule by now. Monday morning cup of hockey. 9 o'clock Eastern, and then noon for DFO Live, and then right here, 3 o'clock. That is your sort of network programming day, and whether it's Sakaris and Price, whether it's Barn Burner, whether it's Oilers Nation Every Day, like there's tons to get to, and everything that Zach's involved in, of course. Tons to get to here. So while you're here, take a good sample around. I think you'll be impressed, as I've always said. I'll put it up against any broadcaster. No one's doing hockey better than what we're doing here at the Nation Network. We're back Monday, 3 o'clock Eastern, noon Pacific. The sheet returns. We'll talk to you in a couple of days. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the 2 tonight, and then the million games on the weekend. Talk to you on Monday. If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Johnny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.